I'm excited. Here in Seattle, up until pretty recently, we weren't really doing very many subdivisions, unit lot line, ULS's unit lot line projects. We weren't splitting a lot of properties. This ADU, DADU boom has allowed us to do that a little bit more often, but there are different parts of the country, different parts of the state, where you can just get large plots of land and you can split them up and you can build new houses, and this is normal. And Seattle is not one of those places. So one of the things I really love is when we get some perspectives from people that are investing, not just in Seattle, but also outside of Seattle, on the pros and cons, right? And the person that we have up here today, Royce, is a great example of that. He lives in Seattle, he has projects in Seattle, he's building a DADU in Seattle right now, but he's also from the east side and he's doing projects in Yakima, a completely different market. So I'm excited to hear the takeaways that he has. I'm excited to hear his story. I'm gonna stop talking. Let's invite him up.
Thanks, Michael. All right, hey, thanks Michael for the introduction. So as he inferred, we're gonna be talking about my early lessons in development and subdivision, but I've already done a lot of talking tonight and I wanna make this collaborative. So if at any point in this presentation you guys have a question that pops up, please do not hesitate to raise your hand because it will give me a break from talking and it'll give me a chance to engage with you guys a little bit more. So feel free to engage. A little bit about me. So I grew up in Selah, Washington, just outside of Yakima, 2 hours east of here for those who aren't aware. I grew up in a family where my parents would live and flip, or we'd be building a house kind of every 2 years. And it was kind of a side hustle for them. And basically, what I didn't know at the time is they were teaching me how to evade capital gains tax. And so at the time, I didn't think that this would ever pertain to anything I'm doing in the future, but it just so happened it kind of all ties together. So then I went to University of Washington, go Dogs. I know there's a couple in the room. And then, yep, there we go. And I ended up getting a major in construction management. So again, like the universe is kind of aligning and putting me towards this like real estate development route. From there, I started working as a general contractor for a commercial company in Seattle. Went to Denver for a few years, worked for a self-storage developer, and then now I'm currently an owner's rep here in Seattle. And then so let's get into some real estate. So this is some of the properties that me and my wife own, which we'll get into now. This all kind of leads to my story of how we got to development, but it started with the need and drive to get to financial freedom. So fresh out of college, was working really hard, trying to make my way to the top of this company. Felt like what I was doing was meaningful, good work. But after about 3 years, I kind of got burnt out and was like, there's got to be a quicker way to financial freedom. And that's where I came into Bigger Pockets, like I'm sure a lot of people in this room. From there, I got my real estate license and represented myself on the purchase of my first HouseHack. Borrowed $25K against my 401K, which is a great strategy for anybody who's looking to purchase their first home. I'd highly recommend going the 401K loan route. And then bought a DADU before people were condoizing and selling them, but I did it because it was the only way that I could afford a mortgage in Greenwood, Seattle area. So learned some on-hand rehabs there with my soon-to-be business partner and my dad. But before we get there, we bought another HouseHack. My wife got into grad school in Denver, and then we moved there, and then we got our second HouseHack. And so we lived in the basement of this one. We added egress windows. We lived in the basement. We short-term rented the upstairs while I Airbnb'd the Seattle home, and overall got some more hands-on experience. And then a year and a half later, we bought our next HouseHack. And so this one was my favorite. And if I were to push new HouseHack people in any direction, it would be go towards 4 units, go towards 3, and try to get as many units as you can for your HouseHack. Because not until I got into the 4 unit did I realize the power in being able to raise rents 3 to 4 times a calendar year. So this is my most proud HouseHack actually, because it's still 15 minutes outside of Denver, and we were cash flowing within 1 calendar year, which is pretty impressive for any major city. Not quite as expensive as you can see Seattle, but still an accomplishment. A lot of lessons were learned on this one, dealing with difficult tenants that we inherited. I'm happy to share more on that on a one-on-one maybe level basis after the presentation. But like Michael said, I finally got property management involved, which it's been so great to me because now my time is better spent on my business and developing and flipping, And I didn't realize it, but self-managing, like Michael said, you kind of have to go through that process. But for me personally, it weighed on me a lot, and my energy, it was draining. So now I get to do stuff that I'm more passionate in, which cues my flipping business, which we started this in July of last year, so relatively recently. And at this point, I have 7 units of rentals. We're cash flowing a little bit per month, but I'm replacing furnaces, I'm replacing roofs, and all these capital expenses. And I'm like, this bigger pockets promise of I'm going to replace my income with rentals in 5 years that I was being told in 2016 and 2019. I just don't see it anymore. I mean, obviously there's a ton of value in owning rentals, and I still strongly believe in that. And this business opened because of the equity that I had in my primary residence and the HELOC that I had. So a very strong advocate for rental properties, but I knew I needed to make a switch to massive income, not just passive income. And that's a slogan that I stole from a podcast that I really enjoy called Collecting Keys. So those guys are some operators out of Spokane. Would recommend giving them a listen if you're a wholesaler or a flipper or developer. Okay, so we bought this house in we bought it in August, a month after we started the business. Bought it in Tacoma for $225 from a wholesale buddy of mine. It was a very small house, 500 square feet or so, and we kind of forced it to be a 2-1. It was a 1-1. So that included a lot of moving around of kitchen and bathroom, and we ended up going all the way down to the studs, lath and plaster. So more than a cosmetic flip, which we thought it was going to be based on these photos. However, we were still successful in our first flipping venture. So we made 26 grand, 3.5 months. Probably worked, so again, let me rewind a little bit. Started this business with my dad, who's operating as the general contractor, and then we are splitting profit split 50-50 on the equity side. And so we worked him pretty hard to make that 26 grand, but at the end of the day, we were like, hey, we can make this happen, okay? This whole flipping thing can actually work out. And then we got our next major flip, which was a fire damaged house in Yakima. And just real quick, I'll show you this next photo. Okay, I'll get that up there, that's the after. We got it for 70 grand, and at the time it was a no-brainer because you couldn't get parcels for 70 grand, let alone a fire damaged house, which the foundation is still valid and we can still be reused. A lot of the trusses actually were salvaged. I don't know how the house can burn like that and then the trusses still managed to be salvaged. So it was 1,500 square feet. We were all in 152, which is about $100 a square foot for this kind of rehab was pretty impressive. And like I said, this was our first home run. And again, it was like, okay, this thing's working. We got to keep doing this, So 115 grand or so in about a 5-month period. This should be a video. Oh, okay. So.
Royce, you got a question?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so if your dad is the GC, does that construction cost include labor or just material?
So we basically do it where we pay him per hour to manage the job. And at this point, we've gotten to the point now where we're subbing out just about everything with the exception of finish cabinetry, hanging base, and doors. So yeah, it's mostly an hourly wage. But so when I underwrite these deals, I underwrite them, how long do I think we'll be on site for? And then take that hourly rate and multiply it by the hours that I'm underwriting. And a lot of the times, the hours that I underwrite for are more conservative than we actually work. So I just end up giving him kind of a bonus on the end of the job anyway for this one particular.
That's all of the, so when you say construction cost, both of those include paying, it's not my business, but it includes a cost to pay.
Yes. That's a good question. No, that's a really valid question because those numbers can be significantly skewed when he's making 50 grand. Well, actually, I should probably verify that number with you and get back to you on that one. But I believe it did. But for this instance, 3 months of construction, it was about 55 grand of labor there, and that was built into the construction costs. So
that included the cost of hiring the subcontractors as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How big was that house?
1,500 square feet. So I'll get into some numbers in a little bit, and I think some of the numbers I'm going to share tonight might be shocking to people in the Seattle area because keep in mind we're building in Yakima, and so labor is significantly cheaper there. And I'll show you the numbers that we're underwriting in Seattle, and they're going to be closer to what you're used to seeing. But just bear with me for a little bit longer, and I'll come full circle on that, I promise.
Will those contractors willing to go to Seattle?
Yes, they are. because my dad's telling him, if you don't go to Seattle, we're going to stop giving you work in Yakima. so that is key. So we'll get to there as well. So funny enough, both of these first two flips I sold off market. So I don't have good after photos. This was a video. I have good videos. It's not playing, but it looks like a new build home essentially inside. So
Those towels somehow didn't burn up.
yeah, so I was like, some of the the wholesaler must have done that. He's like, it's not that bad. Okay, so our third flip, finally we hit a spot where we had a learning lesson. And so this one was in Quincy, Washington, and I went to some lenders and I said, hey, I want to flip in Quincy. They said, we don't lend in Quincy. And I was like, well, that's weird. You know, like I feel like I know that area. So, and my numbers have always been right. So, I mean, why wouldn't you lend in Quincy? And so a lot of people won't lend in small markets, and I found out why the hard way. It could have been a lot worse. You know, we ended up making about $500 in 6.5 months, and you know, I could have been negative. I mean, you know, and the benefit here is like my dad has the GC, like he's getting paid, you know, so I'm learning lessons, and but he's still getting paid, and so he's not making $250 on this, right? So, although this was the easiest one for him because he was only there for 2 weeks. It was our cosmetic flip. It was paint. It was flooring. But I mean, it's so crazy how sensitive a small market is. The comps would support 30 to 40 grand profit all day. And the comp that I went off of, had we been on market a few months earlier, I think we could have squeezed 20 more grand out of this thing. But it's just death by 1,000 cuts. And then there's new build homes that are in that area, which kind of also gets me going towards development, because I'm like, if I'm going to compete with these guys, I might as well have a new product, not an old one. And so that was kind of, it's just a lesson. I don't think I'll flip in Quincy again. We'll leave it at that.
I'm a bit confused there. You say that the purchase price is 274, right? 23 construction, so it should be roughly 300K.
Yeah.
Sale price should show you
Yeah.
around 40K profit.
Yeah, well, there's holding costs too, and then there's like 7% for closing costs that I got to pay to realtors and to title and escrow. So the numbers that I'm showing tonight, they're never gonna, unless I get really granular with it, you just know that there's gonna be a bit of a gap there for, and 7% is closing costs, and then like the carrying of the loan on this, I can't remember what the loan was, probably was like $1,900 a month. So times that by 7 months, that's 14 grand. Good question though. So this time we listed on market, I actually had before and afters. So some nice orange shag carpet in there, and who doesn't love some carpet in the bathroom? So, yeah. I kept this mirror wall though. I thought the mirror wall was nice and brought some character, but. Okay, so at that point we've completed 3 flips. You know, we know we're not gonna hit a home run every flip, but hey, if we can make a home run in 1 and 3, this thing is gonna be scalable, it's gonna be profitable, we're happy with where we're at. However, this flip I bought in January of this year, and I didn't have another deal sent to me, and it's about June at this point, and I said, well, if I don't keep my dad busy, then he's gonna go partner with somebody else. I mean, he has before, and I'm like, I can't lose him, right? Like this business is gonna fall apart. So I'm like, how do I keep this backlog going? And my wholesaler dried up on me basically. I didn't have another deal, and I was relying on one guy in Yakima who's still a good buddy of mine, and my one buddy from college out of Tacoma, and we decided we're not driving to Tacoma anymore. So I was like, what if we just got a piece of land and we broke it up, and then we could always build when flipping is slow and flip when flipping's back, and we'll keep our pipeline full. And so I met with a realtor out of Yakima who did land deals, and I got coffee with them, and I said, this is my plan. I want to start developing horizontally and building land, or building new homes. And he's like, okay. So then a couple months later, he calls me with this off-market deal, and it's 2.5 acres, and it's got a preliminary plat of 9 duplexes. And so I start running the numbers on this deal, and I'm just blown away. My mind's blown. I'm like, this is where I have to be, because I underwrote the deal. I said, we can build one, cash out refinance, build the next one, and repeat 9 times, build to rent, and basically bird this thing out. And oh, and by the way, when this thing's full, it's $30,000 a month cash flow. And I'm like, that's the money that I need to replace my income, right? And even if I'm only getting half of that, suddenly I have replaced my income. And I did this in 1 to 2 years, maybe 3, rather than buying rentals for 30 years. You know, that's an exaggeration. Buying rentals for 10 years, but you kind of get my point. Unfortunately, you know, the guy that was the seller was like, oh, he was willing to negotiate around 350, and then the next day he said, oh, well, the developer next door told me my land's worth 800 grand. And I'm like, each one of these lots, by the way, is about 110. So I'm like, that doesn't include the utility, you know, upgrade and the street improvements. So I'm like, yeah, it's probably worth 900 after you've done all the horizontal work. But anyway, had to go find our own deal, which is what we did next. And so found this land deal. It was on market. It had been on market for over a year. And so the first thing that everyone should know, if you don't already, if there's a land deal on market for an extensive period of time, there's red flags everywhere, right? So you got to find what's wrong with this property and why aren't people buying it, right? And so that's what we did. We got it under contract at 350. Again, 9 duplexes on a 350 lot was an amazing deal. So I thought, well, 4.5 acres at 350 should be even better, right? So TBD on that strategy or that philosophy, but we met with the county and we started doing our due diligence. We did a pre-application meeting with them while under contract. They told us, well, the biggest thing here is you have 1,000 lineal foot of water line upgrade. And so there's an existing 4-inch line that we want you to bring up to 8-inch to get your gallons per minute to your lot to feed to support. At this time we were talking 17 to 20 lots. And I said, okay, you know, I'm not totally frightened yet. I mean, because I think in real estate, just like anything else in life, you need to find what your strengths are and your unfair advantages are. And so for us, my dad has actually done some sewer extensions. And so to me, I said, okay, well, this might be our advantage in the market that nobody else has. A normal developer is going to have to sub all this out. I think we can self-perform some of this and save a significant amount of money. So under that philosophy, we kept going forward. And then we also did a study about whether or not we should short plat this or long plat this. And so this is another Yakima thing that a lot of people aren't going to believe. But in Yakima, if you do a short plat, it's 6 to 9 months to do a short plat. And if you're going to do a long plat, you can assume it's going to take 12 to 15 months, right? And so, you know, usually you're hearing these durations for like DADU builds. James.
What is short plat versus long plat subdivision?
So this in Yakima, every jurisdiction is different, but in Yakima, not anything more than 9 is a long, and then everything below is a short. So when I first went to the county, I said, we're going to do a 9-lot subdivision because I didn't want to meet with the neighborhood. You know, I was nervous about going to the planning commissioning board and presenting a different project to them. The problem with that is if you do a short plat here, I was going to do 8 lots on half of the acreage and then leave the big 9 for a future, another short plat in the future. But they said you can't subdivide the same land twice within 5 years. So I would have to sit there for 5 years, and we said we might as well just do it big the first time around, get through the process, and learn our first time around for the long plat.
So someone who only knows about plats from studying for their real estate license, can you give me an explanation of the difference between a short and long plat and how that affects like just working with the planning commission?
Yep, and it's gonna again. It's all unfortunately it's all dependent on the land code in that jurisdiction. But I think in Yakima's case, it goes from a type 2 or 3 review to a type 4 review, and so. There's just more agencies that get involved, like Fish and Wildlife have to come out here and they have to analyze if there's any protective hawk's nests or if there's shrub steppe, which is an Eastern Washington like sagebush, right? And like apparently they're protecting these things. So there's more agencies that review and have to approve your project if you go to a type 4 review. Basically, if you do a long plat, everybody's going to have a chance to shut your development down or make you pay more money or impact what you otherwise had planned to develop along the way.
So it's better to keep it shorter, you know?
It's all about numbers and profit. I mean, this is why we thought, you know, as our first one, we might want to do a 9-lot is because we didn't want to get shut down. We didn't want to spend more money. We wanted to just be successful in our first attempt, but we also have a land engineering consultant that we have on hire now. And he's an expert in this, and he's been doing this for 30 years in this county. And so and I'll get into that again, a land consultant, a land engineering consultant firm is your number one player, the MVP in development, like a paid mentor to guide you from A to Z through this entire process.
Thank you.
Yep.
Where did you find out that?
So I Googled land engineering firm Yakima, and I also asked around, you can ask the planning department, who submits plats to you guys? Who do you normally work with? That's another good place to start. And so in Yakima, there's 2 big firms that do most of the work. And so I basically called up each one of them and asked them to walk me through the process of what this looks like, and then give me a quote. And so then I'm able to get a totally different perspective from one person, and then another one from the other, and then kind of just look at them and say, well, what's missing between the two? And then call this guy back and say, well, what about this? I heard that the city told me that I had to do this. All right, and I'm not telling him that I'm shopping around his quotes, but I'm still trying to fill the gaps because I've never done this before. So Google the planning commission or a planning department of your jurisdiction, other developers in town. That's where I would start.
And this is before closing on the lot?
Yeah, so this is another thing. When you're buying lots for subdivision of this size, the due diligence period is much longer than when you buy a house here in Seattle, where you have a week. We had 3 months of due diligence, and I wanted to extend it further, to be honest, because it took me 4 to 6 weeks to even get in the room with the county for my pre-application meeting. And so a lot of the times people that are selling land like this, they understand, because every developer is coming to them and saying, I want 6 months to review this, and I want, ideally I want to close after I'm completely entitled. That's the best golden rule that you can ever achieve, and we'll get into that more later. But every developer that comes to them is going to ask for the same thing, so they kind of have to play by that rule.
So it's under contract essentially while you're going through this process?
Oh yeah, and we renegotiated a couple times. This was $350, we got it down to $315.
And I'm just only familiar with like single family and all those contracts, like, so you put contingencies in there, or is there any type of like earnest money that you can keep it?
So typically, if you're going to hold a seller, I don't want to say hostage, but if you're going to hold them on the hook for a year, the strategy is to do non-refundable earnest deposits through your process and say, hey, when we get our preliminary plat, $20,000 goes hard. And so if I walk away, then that $20,000 is yours. And so you kind of string them along with non-refundable earnest money. Otherwise, they wouldn't agree to this. And it's comforting for them to know that, hey, you're serious and you're moving forward. But ideally, I wish I was still under contract on this land, because this week I found out new information that's changing my numbers, right? And so if you're able to keep them going, you got to be strategic, and when you go back to renegotiate, you can't do it every time, but when there's big, earth-shattering things that you didn't underwrite to, and for us, when we went back, they said, can you please give us the list of all the expenses you're forecasting? I was asked to provide documentation as to why I was asking for 50 grand off, and 50 grand is not a lot of money, but from a percentage perspective, that's a significant amount, 10%, 10 to 20.
Yeah, so, and if they do find some nesting bird or a shrub there, specifically the shrub, for instance, you just build around the shrub, like they make.
Yeah, so this is the crazy thing about development, man. So they took, yesterday, see that sidewalk right there? Cut a straight line. They took that pie-shaped corner of my lot, and they just said, if you want to develop, you're going to give that to the county, because we need 30 feet of right-of-way for when we develop that sidewalk and road down the road. And like, it's either that or you don't do your development. So you kind of have to really underwrite for contingencies, because everybody has to operate within the land use code. The fire marshal was trying to get me to add a fire access road right here, and we pushed back today, because that fire access road is only required if you're doing 30 or more lots. He told us yesterday that I have to add that. My land engineering consultant said, no, if you're less than 30, you don't have to do that. So it's give and take, but there is land use code that the county has to abide by. There's only so many subjective things that they can do. But
you can push back on that fire road.
On the fire road, but protective agencies are a lot more difficult to push back on. My land consultant told me that there was a big development he did down the road with a shrub steppe, and they had to plant like 10 times the amount of acreage. So it was like an acre of it. So then he had to either plant 10 acres of shrub steppe somewhere else, or he had to pay money to another agency that supports conservation of them. So like, you're either paying for it or you're doing something for them, you know, but usually there's a solution that they'll propose. They're not just going to say, I mean, in my limited experience, they're not going to shut the entire thing down, but that is a possibility. And so that's another reason why, if you can, you want to keep it under contract through entitlements. Okay, so this is our current preliminary plat as of 3 days ago. It's already changed. So now we have our 20 lots carved out. Our loop through the property is shown here. We have the contour maps. We'll get into some of the numbers now. So 56 grand is what I'm paying that consultant, and that includes survey, engineering for utility drawings. It includes speaking and representing us on our behalf at the neighborhood meeting. Again, A to Z services, and that money is worth its weight in gold, and it's paid over the course of the year, over the year, not just all up front. So street utilities and improvements. This number has inflated pretty significantly since we were under contract. When I originally underwrote this deal, I was anticipating around 800,000 based on some preliminary numbers that I was given. This 1.2 here is the absolute most conservative way I could underwrite this deal. I typically try to underwrite very conservatively and be pleasantly surprised rather than be in financial distress. So that 1.2 includes subbing out everything horizontal, and I'll get into what the subs numbers looks like and some opportunity to force some more profit and equity in a bit.
So you're not actually building the houses, are you? You're just
Nope.
setting up for a developer to buy?
Yeah, well, TBD. So you can either be a developer or you can be a builder, and we're still trying to figure out our identity. And my next slide, I'll talk about the numbers for building the actual structure. These are the numbers if I were to sell the lots to a builder. And so this is another exciting part right here is this is $105,000 a lot. I bought a lot down the road for 120. I think that number is really going to be 110 or 115. And so I've been calling national builders like D.R. Horton and Hayden Homes, and the D.R. Horton guy, land acquisition, is supposed to call me back by Wednesday, but I told them I want 120 a lot. So hopefully D.R. Horton isn't watching this YouTube video, but the 105 is my conservative underwriting, right? And so it's significant when you have 20 lots because 105 to 120 doesn't sound like much, but that 2.1 becomes 2.4, and suddenly this 350 is 650. And so if we self-perform work, I think that 650 can be upwards of 950. And so the range that we're looking at, in my mind, is for the land play, 350 to 950. 350 is what I'm underwriting. These are the budgetary numbers. I'm a numbers guy. I think a lot of people in the room are, and if you aren't, I apologize in advance. But this is about 1,100 lineal feet of sewer and water. And so just for sewer and water to poke into each parcel, they're quoting me 460 grand. That's 275 plus 185. So 460, don't check my math, I think it's 460 into each one lot. And so this is an opportunity that we're looking at right now, self-performing, because I operated an excavator for the first time 2 weeks ago, and it went all right. So, I mean, but no, being serious though, like a lot of this is just a trench, right, that you drop pipe into, and I called like the local supplier in town. The pipe that they use to drop in for water extensions was $3.50 a lineal foot. So the pipe material for that water price down there is $3,500. So what you're paying for is labor and access to heavy equipment. And you can buy a new Mini X for 70 grand. We can go buy 2 new Mini X's, or we can rent equipment, which we've done on foundations before. But again, it just becomes, what do you want your business to be? We're a flipper, we're a developer. Do we really want to be an excavation company? I don't know yet, but if I have to squeeze some more money out of this deal, that's our backup plan.
So this sewer piping, can you explain a little bit what is that like, and how does it make that curve? And do you just buy a huge curve? Is it 4-inch pipe, 10-inch pipe?
Yeah. So
is it some massive thing? Is it plastic? Is it?
So a couple of different things there. So the water pipe has to be steel. The water main is 8-inch. Again, this is all based on the jurisdiction, right? But in Yakima, I can speak to it. The water main in the street is 8-inch steel. Sewer, I'd have to go back and look, but I underwrote it as steel. Plastic is cheaper than steel, So I underwrote it at 350 lineal feet, and that's what the steel 8-inch pipe is from the big supplier in town. So, and then you're limited on, I think you're running hard 90s. You're limited, no one's usually running curved utilities.
So this will be an easy job.
It'll be something. I mean, define easy, because like I could sub it all out, right? And at that point, we're managing subs. Every week, things change. I'm learning more and more, being told new stuff, which we'll get into some lessons learned. I'll let you know at the end of the job if it's an easy one. Yeah.
Could you explain the sort of budgetary numbers and the street utility improvements that you picked out there? Is it just conservative?
Yeah. So yeah, I can explain that. So this number comes to 460, and then the sewer extension is from bringing the sewer from in the road to here. The water upgrade is the 1,000 lineal foot. At the end of this, I actually have an appendix which shows all the line items, and I can go through that. But you have to pay for the inspector, who's $90 an hour from the county, to come out and look at it. You have to do some compact testing from an engineering company. You have water and dust control. You have there's just a lot of little things that start to add up, but typically, from a rule of thumb that a new developer or the other developer has told me, it's about 40 grand for the work inside. Oh, the big thing is asphalt. So the asphalt for this alone, I'm underwriting is 110 grand, and then you have sidewalks, which is another 50 grand, and then the 1,000 foot of lineal water in the street is 100 grand for asphalt. So a little conservative still, but a lot of it's coming in from asphalt and sidewalk.
So is that lot on the bottom right, that kind of gets screwed up by that sidewalk?
No, it'll basically be a drive. The beginning of the lot will be just a driveway, and your setbacks, which I have a plat that shows the actual setbacks in the buildable area. Your setbacks are pertaining to your structure of your house. So as long as I have a drive lane, that's all I need to get back there.
Okay. Because I know, didn't you say the city, the county wanted to take some space?
Yeah, so it's actually, so you see this road right here?
Oh, it's over there.
And the sidewalk ends right there.
Oh, okay.
There's a 300 lot subdivision that there's being proposed north of me. So the county gets all this information about everybody, right? So they know where the city's growing, and the developers are the ones that pay for the road improvements and the sidewalks and the roundabouts. It's not really the taxpayers' money all the time. I mean, most of the time I feel like it's put on the developer, which, we can talk about whether or not that's ethically correct or not. I mean, in some cases I think it might be, in some cases I don't know if it is, but like I said, they're basically from this point straight back 30 feet in from that corner, they're taking that lot from me and calling it their land if I want to do this. But is that going to stop me? No, not when I can see what the numbers might look like. And there was one more back there.
Yeah, what kind of loan did you get to?
Yeah, so originally when we were underwriting this, in the $800,000 range, we have a private lender that we use for our flipping, and he told us that if we got to a point where we needed help, he could help us. We were at that point, when we got under contract, we were going to self-perform a lot. All the profit we make from our flipping business was going to go into this. But there is loan products, which I'll get to at the end here too, where what the hard money banks and the small credit unions that lend on this kind of stuff want to see is 60%. Your all-in cost needs to be 60% of your after repair value, right? So if it's $2 million, put myself on the spot there, I think it's all in like 1.2 million. Anyway, 60% of your all-in costs, or 60% of your after repair value needs to be your all-in cost. That includes purchase and development costs. If you tick that box, then the next challenge is they'll lend up to 85% loan to cost. So in this case, our total cost is like 1.6 purchase and development. So then they'll lend 85% of that. So I would need to bring 15%. I think for a project like this, it's about $200,000 out of pocket, which is kind of what we're paying for the DADU plays out here. At least I am for mine, which I'll get to soon. So again, the spread on this, 350 to 950, I'll say 350 to 650, assuming that no one's self-performing work, depending on the sales price of the land value. Okay, so now the next question that was asked is, what does it look like to build on these homes? Because if you remember, we got into this because I wanted backlog of work, and now it seems like, to me, it seems more appealing to just offload the land and work with D.R. Horton and build the relationship there, because that's repeatable and scalable. But we did look at this from let's see if we can be builders. And so if we were to be builders, I ran the numbers at, our construction purchase all-in cost is $80,000 a lot. They come out to $105 a lot conservatively. So we're forcing $25,000 equity per lot. If we were to build and sell, we're looking at about another 30 to 50 grand per lot. And so when you multiply that by 20, we were forecasting an all-in profit of 1.16. But the trick is 35% of that is from the land play. So we're really only getting like 60% of that from being a builder, and you're taking on quite a bit more risk. You're timing markets. You're introducing new inventory to the market. If the housing market changes, you're in a pinch. And so there's a lot more risk, and so we're still kind of analyzing is the juice worth the squeeze here? Because then this timeline becomes like a 3-year project. And again, it's a sizable portion that we're getting from the equity play of things. So to determine if we were going to become builders or not, we bought a lot down the road, which I talked about a second ago. So we bought an infill lot from another developer and decided to build a spec home so that we can really hone in on what our numbers would look like for the big 20 lot if we were to become builders. And so this one, I think I overpaid for it. We paid 120. Like I said, I think 110 and 115 is the correct range. But for me, it was all about the edification of the process and becoming a builder. So like even if, we're forecasting 33,000. If we make nothing, I mean, like I said, my dad's getting paid to GC it. He's got a backlog of work. But we also, I now have a binder full of quotes and subcontractors that do everything from foundations to cabinets, right? And so previously in the flipping world, I would go into a project and I might only need a painter, a flooring guy, and a cabinet guy. I got a guy for stucco walls on the outside, or a roofer now, and I know exactly what his numbers are, and I have a booklet suggesting on what he can perform work at. And here's the shocking number that I think most people won't believe me on, is all those quotes, and I can show you the numbers, we're building this for $130 a square foot. And for those who aren't aware, I think Seattle people are probably building for like $275 to $325. And so like the question was asked, will they come to Seattle? And that's the big question. And most of our guys have said yes. So we're really excited about that opportunity. This, again, is really conservative. I'm really hoping for closer to 600 ARV, which would make this an $83,000 profit. And if that's the case, then we might become builders. If the market doesn't call for that, and we only get 55 or even a little bit less, then we might not be builders of spec homes of this size. This is 2,400 square foot in Yakima, because this is a higher end purchase price for Yakima.
So that's one floor?
Yep, one floor Rambler, 2,400 square feet. So we thought it would be more desirable in that community for a single floor than upstairs, downstairs. It's central Washington, so people are used to having enough land around them to do one story. No one doesn't really like taking stairs, but everyone in Seattle is kind of used to it.
And then when you said you bring crews into Yakima, because I even have this issue where like, I have crews in Tacoma, and they're giving me grief going, they're not proposing like renting. Oh, I don't want to rent it, charge me more. How do you incentivize them to go? I mean, are you giving them hotels and stuff?
So in the DADU, yeah, we've talked about fixing up the front house and letting people stay there for sure. Or even if I had to pay for hotel rooms, if I can build at that price, I'll buy hotel rooms all day for sure. Yeah, I think it's also supply and demand. Like the contractors in our area, if they can tell you that because they can probably go work for somebody else. But there's only so much new construction in central Washington, and they're used to traveling because we live in the city, right? And over there, everyone's used to driving 30 minutes to work, 45 minutes an hour. And that's a much longer distance. I mean, you might still drive 30 minutes to work here, but it's a much shorter distance, so it doesn't.
Going 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll hit I-90 and go 90 miles an hour and get here, whatever it takes. Okay, so the DADU play. So progress photos. So that was the Mini X that I got to operate, and then this was 2 weeks of progress. And so the guys at Framing, man, these guys are crazy. They're knocking it out so quickly. We'll be doing trusses tomorrow. believe it or not. And so that was today. They're putting up walls, and then our foundation. So some progress photos there. So I moved to Colorado for 3 years when my wife was in grad school, and when I moved back to Seattle last November. So I haven't even been here a full year, but all I've heard about since I've been back is DADUs, right? So I'm like, I got to get into this DADU play. I got to get in the DADU play. I've only been flipping in Yakima. And so we finally got a Del Ridge DADU play, and we're pretty excited about it. This is the front house. Next door neighbor's got a 3-pack, so our house sits close to the front, so it looks pretty promising. We're currently in design. I got it for $540, projecting $75,000 reno. There's some odd layouts going on in the house. The roof needs to be replaced, so $75,000. I feel good about that reno cost. And then I said $75,000 soft and holding cost. That's to get us through permitting for the DADUs in the back. Because I failed to mention, but we're building based on the interim code. So we're building 2 DADUs with a shared wall, and they're 3 stories tall. So 3 stories and 2 DADUs, both of those are under the interim code. That's the play we're making. We have a drive lane that we're creating for the front house to have its own parking. And so back to the numbers. We are $75,000. That includes design costs and holding costs. And then I see an exit value of $580. So I'm actually losing $110,000 on the front. And we're looking at it like I would buy this land here for $110 all day, because that's where the profit is for us. And so the timeline that we're looking at here, 16 to 17 months. Our intake date is in December. So I'm hoping to build in February. That might be too aggressive. I've never gone through the permitting process yet here in Seattle. But this is the floor plan. The back DADUs will have each a garage. And then if I go to the numbers, the land cost is $110. So now I'm carrying closer to Seattle numbers, right? Because I'm being conservative. In my mind, that's conservative. That still seems pretty aggressive, I think, to some people who are probably doing DADUs. But I'm saying $250 a square foot for the build, which, I mean, this is about 2,000 square feet. And so is the other house in Yakima that we're building is 2,400 square feet. It is a second level, but DADU soft and holding cost 42. So ARV, I ran comps on townhomes because to me this is operating like a townhome almost. You have a shared wall, you have a 3-stack, and it just, to me, it gives townhome feel. So I underwrote it as a townhome, which is a $550 each purchase price for a profit of $330. So it's just interesting to look at these numbers because we're going to find out quickly, where we want to go as a company, if we want to keep doing the long horizontal land plays or do the DADU plays here. But just to refresh everyone's memory, I mean, the timeline is 16 to 17 months. The profit is $330. If I sell the land in Yakima, that timeline is like 12 to 13 months, and it's $350. $350 could be $650. This $330 could be much higher for us because we can build efficiently. So it's interesting because the exit strategy on this type of build is obviously better. If the market turns, I can probably fill it full of renters and weather a bad housing market. But from a developer standpoint, if I can get D.R. Horton to commit with an LOI to buying my land before I entitle it, then I eliminate the exit risk. So just some things to consider. And I got a question here.
I was just wondering what goes into that 16 to 17 month holding period.
A lot of permitting, a lot of design. I mean, I really only have 3 months of construction,
Wow.
2 to 3 months of construction, and 1 to 2 months on the sales.
Yeah.
That's how I'm underwriting it.
Are you planning to sell the SFR before the DADUs in the backyard?
It's a good question. I wanted to provide parking up here for that purpose, because if I can, I would love to do that. I think before I can do that, I think I need to frame this in, enclose the siding, finish the siding, and then keep the work remaining to be inside the footprint of the house. And as soon as we get there, I'm definitely going to try to sell that. And Logan's giving me the nod, so that must be the good strategy. Breathe day.
5,000 square feet, that's for the full, just the DADU lot?
Yes, so this lot is just shy of 5,000 square feet. They actually surveyed it and it was a little bit less, but on the market it said $5,000 square foot.
How big is each ADU?
I told the architect that I wanted 1,000 square feet, and he keeps. Originally, he was like, well, if you did a unit lot subdivision, you can make one 1,500 square feet, and I was like, I just want to go the DADU route, because if I can pull off the utilities on the front of the house, I want to do that because it's cheaper to pull off that than to break into the street. This is on 16th Ave Southwest, which is a fairly busy street, and I don't want to cut into the road there. And I think you also open yourself up to frontage improvements potentially. And so I wanted just to keep it simple and stick with the DADU play rather than add 300 to 400 square feet. But I could be convinced otherwise. And Logan was just telling me before this presentation that the big advantage from the ULS, at least my understanding, was that there was no HOA, but it sounds like there's a new law that is actually enforcing HOA on unit lot subdivision anyway. So to me, for my project, I'm not seeing the value quite yet in it.
That is only if you share utilities. If you don't share, then there's no HOA.
Okay, that's good to know.
In that build budget, are you accounting for site costs and like other utility costs?
It's a good question. Probably not. But again, I think I can build for cheaper than that. So that's why I like to run my numbers conservative. And again, the advantage that we have is my partner has done the extensions, although they were in Yakima, not in here. I would love to get with you if you have information on that and make sure that I'm carrying accurate information for that.
I was gonna ask a question, do you know how much it costs to extend the utilities?
I don't, because I haven't had someone quote it. I can tell you in Yakima roughly how much it is.
It's about like 1,000 a linear foot.
1,000 a lineal foot. So the 1,000 lineal foot in Yakima for water was 275. So it was in Yakima, it's like 276 a lineal foot. I mean,
I'm saying it's 1,000 here.
it is. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay. See, it's just crazy to me, the different pricing you get, and it's all in the labor.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So
Most of it is in the profit actually.
is it? Well, yeah, they're marking up their labor. Okay, so this is the first time we're actually using other people's money too. I started with the $150,000 line of credit, and we doubled that, and so our capital, we've more than doubled that. So we have a capital runway, but for us to start taking on holding costs in Seattle, where it's $4,000 a month for the mortgage, and at this point, the way that we're scaling, the cash flow is becoming a headache. So we're starting to break into the other people's money scaling philosophy, and in this case, it's a relative. So we're getting a really competitive equity split. I know other people are probably used to seeing 60-40 or 65-35, but this relative, they know that we do good work. They're confident in our numbers. They want to see us succeed and grow. So it's mutually beneficial. And again, I'm hoping that we can be even more profitable than what I have on the screen, but they would be getting a 31% cash on cash return for some money that was otherwise sitting in a bank from a recent sale of their home. Okay, see how we're doing on time here. So I got a call earlier this week from somebody saying, hey, I saw you're doing a presentation. I have land in Redmond. Can you give me some next steps on what I need to do to subdivide this land? So this is the workflow that I would operate in any market. So the first step is to verify your zoning. You can either go to a planning GIS map, or you can search King County Parcel Viewer, or whatever county you're in. And then from there, you click your lot, you'll get your zoning. The next step, I'd say, is to either ChatGPT or Google, what can I build in NR3 or King County Land Use Code NR3, and then you'll get a table, which in Yakima would tell you, for R1 you can have one lot of 7,000 square feet. So those two things are very easy to get. From there, you can start running the numbers on a pro forma. If you get budgetary information from site and excavation and utility companies, you can start to formulate a pro forma and seeing if it's worth continuing. And then I would seek counsel from both planning departments and local land engineering consultants. I talked about the importance of those people. Don't be afraid to bug the planning department. My thought is, hey, these guys are oftentimes getting paid by the county and city, so use these resources because it's fact tax. We're paying for that. So I love giving them a call. Some are easier to reach than others, especially in a small town. In Seattle, you probably can't pick up the phone and reach them. I'm seeing people nodding. In Yakima, you can. So that's one more advantage to working in a smaller market. I talked about receiving quotes and comparing, contrasting. So once you've made your your decision on who you're moving forward with, you should have a pretty good understanding of what your process is going to look like and your numbers at this point. Once you hired your consultants, they'll start the survey, they'll put together a preliminary plat, you'll meet and you'll massage it, go over that, then you'll have a pre-application meeting with the county or the city. They'll provide commentary and poke holes in it and shoot down your dreams, but then you'll audible and you'll still make hopefully a profit on the end. And then at that point, we'll start to get into your engineering utility drawings. Around that same time, you'll have a public hearing where you present your project to the planning board. And essentially, I've sat in one of these meetings a couple times when I was with the self-storage developer, but at that time didn't really understand what was going on. So now I get to sit in it again as the owner, which will be a little bit more stressful probably. But the land consultant will be there to kind of run the show. And basically, the way I understand it is you're presenting why the project that you're proposing is within its rights by the land use code to be developed, basically. And then there'll be a forum at that meeting for the public to talk, and the city council sometimes. Whoever the final decision maker is, it's kind of different depending on the market. It could be the planning commission board, the county commissioning board, or the city council. It just depends on what your jurisdiction is. Once you get approval from that, then you can actually start the horizontal road work, and that's where the utility upgrade occurs. And that's up until that point, you're not even doing the most expensive part, which is the actual work, right? And so that's the other thing is, you know, if we can't get good lending, or if we're tied up in other projects, we could always, you know, there's a period of time where you can get approval. You have like X amount of months or years to actually perform on that. You don't have to start right away. And then after you complete all of the horizontal utilities and the street curb improvement, then you get your final plat, and that's when you can actually subdivide, sell those parcels off as individual lots. Okay, so those are the quick steps. This is some slides on tips and tricks of just some quick hitting stuff that I've come across in the last few months. This list is growing every day, changing every week. So if you're interested in this stuff, let's connect afterwards, and I'll continue to share kind of the tips and tricks as I gather more. So I'll start with excavation. So if our topography slopes up, and at the time I said, okay, well that's good, because I know if you're sloping down, then you need to pump sewer up, which can be more expensive. If you're sloping up, then you can gravity flow sewer. So from that perspective, I was like, okay, well that's got to be a good thing. But you got to keep excavation in mind, and we weren't, if I'm being completely honest. And so our lots are looking like they're going to be tiered, which is adding a significant amount of retaining walls between the lots, which I didn't underwrite for originally. So, and there's also grade limitations at how steep your road can be, and hauling dirt out is very expensive as well. So just understand the topography and how it impacts your development. I talked about the $40,000 lot development costs. These are just quick numbers. Like if you're like me and you like the 1% rule or a napkin sketch, just rule of thumb, these are two that I'm going by in Central Washington. If you're buying an infill lot to build a spec home, we typically try to get the purchase price. We try to get the ARV to be 5 times the purchase price. And if we can check that mark, then we're going to have a profit. And again, this is if someone calls me and says, hey, I got this land deal, you know, I don't have to underwrite the deal. I can go to these kind of rules to understand where we might be. We actually talked about the lending, so some good questions because we're hitting on some of these. Be willing to overpay if the sellers will extend closing through entitlements. Again, I think it just eliminates all your risks. So the other thing, the financial benefit is I pay $2,000 a month to sit on this land for a year. That's 24 grand. It's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but it would be sure nice for cash flow reasons in our personal banking to not have to see that money go out every month. But the big thing there is to eliminate all your risks before you close. And then on the same day that you purchase that lot, you can turn around and sell 20 lots to a national builder like D.R. Horton. And so that if you're doing that process and you have connections for horizontal subcontractors and you're using private equity, then you can really scale and do about 5 of these a year, which I think the people that are really successful in development, which I mean, we talked about prior to this meeting, I think they're able to scale because they operate in this fashion. I close on a land and I'm learning the hard way, but I think that is what you should strive for if you want to be a successful developer. And then always meet pre-app meetings during due diligence period. Okay, so some of these are kind of funny. Look, in hindsight at least. So one is walk the site. If you're buying a build-ready lot, like say I bought like lot 4, right? Something like that. I didn't really buy it, but something like that. Walk it and verify that the survey pins are in. The developer has to have all the lot corners pinned, but when we went to build our infill lot down the road from here, we found that one of the survey pins was missing. And luckily, it wasn't 2 of the pins. We were worried it was 2. We ended up finding the second one. But it just makes it, if you don't have at least 3 of them, I mean, you could go off the front 2 to get your setbacks and find your foundation. But we almost had to call a survey company to come out and restake it, which would have been another $3 to $5 grand. I already overpaid for the land. I didn't underwrite for that. And so it would have been easy to identify just walking the pins before you close, because I could have renegotiated that had it been a deal breaker. And the other one is walk the property line and look for items within the property boundary. This is an obvious one, but when you're buying 4.5 acres and the wheat is up to here, like the grass, and there's downed barbed wire, like I'm not actually walking the entire 4.5 acres, or at least I didn't. And I wish I would have, because in lot 1, which is the lot they took the corner from me, there's a power pole there with high voltage power on it. And so I would have been able to known at that time, had I walked the estimated property boundary, that, hey, there's live power here. So I bought 4.5 acres, but I really bought 4.5 acres minus that corner there. And so like that's a point where you can probably renegotiate, and had I walked it, I could have. 2 more I'll go through real quick. So 1, begin coordinating with your utility companies ASAP. I think everyone who operates here in Seattle understands Seattle City Lights and their delays and their timelines. That same concept applies in every jurisdiction, especially for power. So these people are giving me the same thing, design, we can't design until next year. Well, you just have to kind of, at least in Yakima, it's a smaller community, you can kind of pull some strings and sweet talk them per se, but just bottom line is coordinate with them early and often. And then I told you how I got the land deal from an agent that specializes in it, so there's value in that. And then another back of the napkin sketch is, if you take your entire square footage and you multiply it by 75%, that's probably your developed gross area. So for this lot, we took the square footage and multiplied it by 0.7 or 0.75, and then divided that by 7,000. It spits out about 20 lots, which is fairly accurate. And so you just need to understand that like 25% to 30% is going to be taken up from streets, curbs, or like retention, pond, stormwater containments. Okay, that's a lot of talking, and looks like my tags got cut short there. But thank you guys so much for listening and sticking around. Appreciate all the questions. If you want to connect, that QR code should give you my socials. I'm most active on Instagram. Happy to share any knowledge I can to help anybody. I always really appreciate it when people share knowledge with me. And yeah, we'll open up to additional questions if anyone has any.
So have you decided to whether build the ADU or use the top flat? I mean the land development flat.
Which have I decided which one I like better?
Yes.
I think I'll have a better answer and idea in like 6 months.
It seems to be the same profit area.
It is, but like I said, I really think I can make 900 grand on that land play. So it all depends on how many more like curveballs I get thrown on that development, right? Because I'm not out of the weeds yet on that. And like I said, things changed as of this week on it. So, I mean, I'm really liking the idea of development. I think you can go so much further if you were to a point where you could negotiate someone to hold the land, and you got through entitlement, and so D.R. Horton, like they told me, hey, 20 units, we haven't really built in Yakima, but we hear about it, and 20 units is not a lot for us, but it's good for us to test the market. Like, do you have any other down the road? And I said, well, if you want to partner with me, I can certainly go get more land. And so I think the ceiling is so much higher, I think, personally, for the land play in Yakima than it is the DADU play. But the exit strategy for the DADU play, I like the rental opportunity if I have to rent them out. It's a cool exit strategy.
But if it's Seattle, if you have the same lot, and you're saying that the DADU plays better than subdivision?
No, I'm leaning towards subdivision right now.
Oh, sorry, it's a subdivision. Like,
Yeah.
what's the pros and cons there? Like, well, what's make it easy and what makes it hard?
Okay, so the pros in the DADU play is if the market tanks, then I don't know if home builders are going to buy my empty vacant lots, right? So there's no exit there. I can't put a renter there. If the market tanks and I have 3 single-family houses on one lot in South Seattle, I mean, I can make quite a bit of rental cash to pay for my holding costs. And so I think it's a safer exit. I think the pro, well, and it's a safer exit, and I also think it's a safer play because I'm at the mercy of a lot of people's subjective interpretation of code for the land development play. I'm at the mercy of other agencies that can come by and try to shut me down. So there's a lot more risk in the horizontal land play, but there's a lot more reward in my mind. So that would be another pro and con to consider. Yeah, I think those are the 2 biggest ones for sure.
So I've been actually in my research, I read like the earnings calls of these publicly traded builders like KB Homes and Lennar, and they said that they've been, with these higher rates, they've been spending like, $30,000, $40,000 to buy down rates for people in order to get these homes to move. And so they're saying that their profit margin it's like their lowest profit margin since '08. And so they're saying that in many cases they're going to slow down and build less.
Yeah.
Has that been, have they been talking about that, and what is that?
So I haven't had a lot of conversation. That's certainly one of the risks, right? Like if home builders stop buying, then that's a risk. The advantage is like we're capable of being a builder ourselves. So maybe we just slowly build. If it's a bad market, we build 1 and sell 1. We can sell 5 lots to a local builder maybe. I mean, we'll probably, no matter what we do, I mean, if we don't partner with a national builder who can offload all 20, we're going to list at least a couple for 120, right? And just see if somebody like in the neighborhood wants to buy one. I mean, I bought one for 120, so someone's got to be foolish enough to if I did it, right? I'm just kidding. I hope none of my prospects are watching this video, but no, what I'm saying is like I think as long as you can float the holding costs, which our flipping business can support, I believe, as long as you can be a builder, then there is exit strategies. I'm not tied to just being dependent on a national builder, but that is definitely a concern for sure.
If you have to build yourself, it's going to be tougher, right? Because your holding cost is on all 20 lots in every month. Not just 1 lot.
Yeah, but I could build 1 home on 1 construction loan, and then before I open up another one. So that's if you build all 20 consecutively. And so yeah, the holding costs can get out of control very quickly if you do that. For sure. And the other thing is like, if I don't get the big risk is like if I don't get a good lending product, but then I also will know my lending product before we start the most expensive part, which is the actual horizontal work. So the only money we're really out is the 56 grand and to get us through permitting. So I'll know for sure the direction will be once we're through permitting, which should be April-ish of next year.
So how early on do you engage a company like Lennar or D.R. Horton to come in and start designing their homes and putting together their plans and their master use permit or whatever they need to file before you can close on a sale?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I didn't even think about calling these guys until last week because I talked to another developer in Tri-Cities, and I saw him on one of those Facebook groups that everyone here is probably a part of here in Washington. So I saw him post and I reached out to him. I said, hey, you're developing in Tri-Cities. I'm developing in Yakima. I got on the phone with him that night and we started talking, and he told me how he had an LOI signed with D.R. Horton. And I'm like, that's a good idea. So then I called D.R. Horton the next day, as well as like 10 other people, and left voicemails. And I was surprised to get a phone call back from them. But I asked him the same question. I'm like, when did you engage with these guys? And really, you can do it as early as you want. It's helpful if you have a preliminary plat, so you can show them, here's what you would be buying, if we were to partner. And he was trying to explain to me that that he could get the builder to actually release some of their purchase money to float the earnest money non-refundable to the seller. And so then you're really not floating a lot of payments. And I don't know if that's too good to be true. I got to do some research. But when he was explaining that to me, I mean, there's a lot more to learn there, and people can operate with zero money out. I know that there's a mentorship program that I almost joined, but then I said I'll just figure this out the hard way. But the guy that runs it, he operates with zero capital in the deals. He just partners with capital, and he gives them, I think he even gives them 50-50 of the capital, right? And he preaches overpaying, and but I mean, at the end of the day, his bank account only goes up, and he doesn't have anything pulling from it. So it's a powerful strategy if you want to partner with capital.
Sweat equity.
Yeah. You can get sweat equity in horizontal development. That's the bottom line.
In Seattle, for the ADU deal, you're probably gonna do condo, right?
Yeah.
Is there,
Do you know if it's possible to do condo in Seattle?
I think it is. People aren't really doing it. Again, I think it's a lifestyle difference, right? People want land, they want their own space. But I don't see why. I mean, you certainly can do ADUs the same fashion, right?
What if you can also have that much land, that much space, but just the ownership structure is condo? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, I know you can build duplexes in R1, and you can build duplexes in single family zoning in Yakima. So yeah, you could definitely do that. I just don't know, and some people are doing that. I just don't know what the sales price is. People are happy in Seattle to live in a 1,000 square foot home. People in Yakima, that would be weird to them. I think. It's just a different culture. I mean, like everyone drives to work, right? There's little public transportation, so you got to have the 3-car garage for your toys, and it's just it's a different.
It's actually different from what I'm asking, because condo is just the way that you own the land.
Yeah.
So you can actually have the same thing. You can have a 3-car garage, 4,000 square feet home.
Yeah.
And that's still a condo.
So instead of subdividing it, try to condo 20 homes on something that.
Just wondering if that's
Yeah.
still a thing.
That's a good question. I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
I mean, one of the advantages of condoing is speed of
Cheaper, not have to go
the
through
process.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that utilities are in the street and on the primary home that you're tapping off of, oftentimes on these projects, you've got your utility work either way. That's the difficult. That's the big cost, not the. Well, I mean, it's all cost. That seems like the bigger cost than the timeline.
Yeah, it's definitely the utilities and the street improvement, and I don't think that the Yakima County is so antiquated. I don't know that it would be well received. I mean, they're hardly receiving my lots well. I can't imagine if you were to try to get around a subdivision through condoization that they would be receptive of it. We're more progressive and forward thinking over here on the west side when it comes to some of those things.
do you think you would get that same reception if you went to like a small municipality, like if you went to like a Kenmore or a smaller city that's still on the west side that's near Seattle? Would they be easier to work with than like?
Personally, I think so. I know a guy that works in Linwood. I went through the UW had a commercial real estate program that I went through with him, and he was really, really cool. And I do think those smaller towns outside of Seattle would be easier to get in contact with and happier to answer your phone calls. Well, you guys know where to find me. I'd love to chat more afterwards and connect with anybody. Thank you guys so much for listening.